Now, I'm really glad you're here today. God's going to do something neat. As always, every time we connect with God in His Word, He rearranges some of the ways that we think and does some great, I just call it heavy lifting. And I love how God does this in a way that's uniquely Him at work in us. But boy, when we lean in and say yes and just go His way, great things happen. So today we're going to be wrapping up our Love Handles series. It's really a relationship series that we've been exploring all the way through the month of February. And if you've missed any of these particular sermons, let me give you a quick recap and then just let you know that I want to encourage you to go back and pick them up online. You can either listen at lifelinkchurch.com under sermons. You can podcast them through iTunes, and there's just a lot of neat things you can see there. But over the past few weeks, we actually opened up the series with looking at week number 1 on what love is really, because it's different than what the culture around us says it is. And we actually took it from God's perspective because the Bible says God is love. And since He is love, He's the authority on it and knows how it works. So we took a look at that. And then we actually explored the practical application of what some of that means, because if you don't know what love is, you'll actually look for it in the wrong places. And you'll think somebody can bring you love. And what God was saying, no, somebody doesn't bring you love. I do that in you, and then I heal up the areas that you're wobbling in, so that when the two of you actually fall in love together, there's two whole people making a one out of that, and it's better than the other options that are out there. And so I love what God was doing. We talked about becoming the person that you're looking for, who they are looking for. So we looked at that. Week 2, we actually talked about dating. And it may have been a while since you've heard a sermon on dating, but I brought a specialist in. It was my wife, and we had a lot of fun going through that. And we talked about the purpose of dating beyond the tingles. You know, what's really going on, and what's the purpose of dating, and some of the big ideas that God has for us. And then last week was all about sex. And I heard that perhaps some of you, I didn't give enough adequate warning on there, and so it got a little bit awkward for you. I apologize if your kiddos were in here. This is PG-13 every week, and so I just want to make sure that if you're bringing kids in, you do so at your own peril. Just kidding. So anyway, you never know what we're going to talk about, but it will be real. I guarantee you that. No, we love our kiddos, and we're really intentional what we're doing with their areas of ministry. But when it came to the topic of last week, we looked at this issue that sex is not just physical, something deeply spiritual, and God designed it that way. And if we violate what God was designing that whole concept to work like, we actually hurt ourselves at the deepest level possible. So a lot of people actually connected with me afterwards and said, Pastor Dave, I wish I'd have heard that sermon a long time ago. So, but today I want to actually turn the corner, and I want to do a sermon that I'm entitling, Before I Say I Do. And some of you have just right there just probably checked out and go, well, that ship has sailed. I've already done. So there's nothing in here for me. And I'm going to say, hold it. There's plenty in here for all of us today. And so I want to encourage you to come on back, bring the ship into the harbor, dock up again, and let's actually connect and let God do something great. The reality is this series has been primarily focused on adults, young adults, and even high school students who are in the lane of life called single adult life, and providing specific handles and perspectives on how to navigate that particular layer or journey or season or lap of God's purpose in their life. I had one of our young singles actually send me an email this week and said, Pastor Dave, thank you for taking the time to do a sermon series aimed straight at single adults. Most of the time, we have to kind of pull things out that seem like we're a second, an afterthought in the sermon series because of the assumption of marriage, but a lot of us aren't married, and so it really is refreshing to hear a sermon series based right at where I live. And so this person said, thank you so much for that. And it was really rewarding. And I want to say thank you as a church for just being gracious and say, hey, not everybody is one way. We got to figure out how to synergize with each other and help each other make the most of the lanes that we're in. So I love that about our church. Interestingly enough, most of the feedback I've gotten has been constructive and positive, but it wasn't from single adults. It was from married people who were saying, man, I wish I'd have known that later. In fact, or earlier in my life. In fact, as I finished the sermon just moments ago from the first service, I was walking out to kind of get reset for this service, and I stopped and talked to one of the men in the hall, and I'm just now, it's fresh kind of relationship getting to know him, and he said, Pastor Dave, I've been married for 12 years. That sermon just changed my life. And I was like, wow, and here I was the whole time preaching straight to singles, and yet you really did exactly what we talked about. The idea is you pull out of it what God's talking to you about. And he said, there's some difference-making material in there, and it's going to make a difference for me. So I want to encourage you today, really lean in on this and let God do something for you. I also want to give you the heads up, and this is just practical, that today is going to actually go through a circuit of ideas. Some of them will be insightful. Many of them may actually be awkward or painful or uncomfortable to listen to because of choices all of us have made in our past. But what I want to tell you is this. Go all the way on the journey with God today. It didn't bring you full circuit because God never takes you out, dangles you over the cliff, and just kind of makes you feel bad and then goes, sorry, and drops you. That is not who God is. He always brings us full circle and says, let me show you we're going to redeem this. Does that make sense? So lean in and embrace what God wants to do in your life, and let's make the most of this. Let's open in prayer. We're going to dive in and watch God do something great. Heavenly Father, we come to you right now with faith in our hearts, believing you're going to speak to us. We're going to capture what you talk to us about and apply it. And in so doing, we're going to actually let you lead us in the life that we're living. I thank you, Lord, for all of it in Jesus' name. Everybody said? Amen. Well, I want to start today, interestingly enough, by talking about Noah. You may think, well, what does Noah have to do with single adult life today? Interestingly enough, I think a lot. Hebrews 11, chapter 7 gives us this snapshot of what was going on when God was working with him thousands and thousands of years ago. And that is this. It was by faith that Noah built a large boat to save his family from the flood. He obeyed God, who warned him about the things that had never happened before. Some of you are familiar with the historical figure of Noah, captured for us in the pages of Scripture, who actually the Lord visited him and said, I'm going to do something in your lifetime that's never been done before, and so that you are able to avoid the catastrophe that's coming, I need you to do something different than the people that you're living around. I need you to do something different than they're doing, so that when the flood comes, you'll actually be able to avoid it. And so that's a summary of what was going on. And so what happened was Noah actually built, the Bible says, a large boat. Some translations called it an ark. He built it on dry ground for a flood that had never happened before. And so the culture around him mocked him, derided him, in all manner of, it's similar to what happens in the culture today. How many of you know it's not popular to be Christian? In fact, it's popular for our culture to persecute Christians, to laugh at us, to mock us, and all those things. This is not unprecedented in history. Our world has been here before. But the God that we serve is bigger than all that. He's the same God that was back then. He helped Noah avoid the flood. He's going to be with us. And if we go with what he said, he's going to show us how to do the same thing. God is a big God, yes or no? Yes. But in order to get the benefits of this big God, we got to do what he said. What would have happened if Noah would have said, hey, thanks for the insight, God. That's really interesting. In fact, I'm going to write a book about ark building. I appreciate the insight. That's a really heavy revy right there, God. Let me just jot that down. Well, I feel better knowing that there's an ark that could be built and that we should really be building. We need to really do something about that, God. Somebody needs to do something about that ark. What would have happened if he would have actually listened to God, captured it, and did nothing about what God said? Well, at least he heard something that God was saying. But even though he heard it, he still had to apply it in order to avoid the catastrophe of the flood. Does that make sense? So I'm investing a few moments in this kind of mental diving board so we can, as we go into this, we realize it isn't enough just to write that down and go, oh, that's interesting. Well, that's a pretty interesting perspective. It's a nice truth for you, or, however you might choose to say that. God actually talks to his people, tells them what to do, and if we do that, we get the benefit of what he's doing. So knowing isn't enough. Now we have to know, because Hosea 4:6 says that it's possible that we could actually not know what God's saying if we're ignoring him. So we need to hear him, and we need to obey him, yes or no? Yes. All right. So having said that, now let's move right into today's message. Every weekend, a phenomenon happens all over the world. Two people who are not married walk up to an officiant of some kind, usually with a few witnesses or more, and they exchange some words, and then they leave married. You've all seen that before. That's not something new. Now think about what that is. There's two people coming together. They came to the point of that commitment. They actually made some commitments to each other. And then ultimately left now married. The problem is many of them made commitments that they were not prepared to fulfill. And days later, sometimes weeks later, months later, sometimes years later, it really dawns on them, I said I do, but I can't. And it wasn't because in the moment that they were saying I do that they didn't want to. They wanted to. They had an image in their mind of happily ever after, and we're going to do this together. What they did not realize, however, is that they for many people, are overlooking a principle that really is the whole point of today's message. So if you're taking notes, write this down. Promises are no substitute for preparation. Really, in a single sentence, this is what God's talking to us about today. Promises are important. The function of covenant is important in relationships. It's important in the way we deal with God and with each other. So promises are important, but they're not a substitute for something else called preparation. You can say anything. You need to be prepared to run the distance. A lot of our young adults in here were running in a race just yesterday, sporting their medals. I was looking at them earlier and was pretty inspired by that. So if you ran that race yesterday, congratulations for finishing that race. And I love that. So I was thinking about this earlier. Let's say that I was inspired by the idea of running a marathon. So I want to run a marathon. And so I say, you know what, I'm going to run a marathon. And I find a marathon, and I sign up for a marathon. I pay the registration, and I sign the application form. I'm in the marathon. I'm going to run the marathon. How much chance of success do you think I'll have of finishing that marathon if I don't train for it? If I show up to the starting gun on the day of the marathon, they fire the trigger, I take off running, I'm running with the idea, this is going to be great, it's going to be awesome. And at some point, like 100 yards down the road, it'll start hurting. And then it's going to show up. I was not prepared for this, right? I mean, at some point, the promise only takes you so far. There's got to be something past the promise. And that's what we're talking about today. Promises are important, but you got to prepare. Just because you say I do doesn't mean you're capable of it. Now think about this for a moment. If I say I do to something, I am now accountable to what I said I would do. Does that make sense? And when you are accountable to something you're not capable of actually doing, you're a miserable person. Notice, in the moment you make the commitment, it feels great. But at some point it dawns on you, if I'm not prepared to do this impending kind of doom idea starts kind of rolling around in your mind. And it begins to influence all of your decisions. And you just realize, hey, I'm slowly driving over a cliff here, and I don't know how to undo this. Why? Because I made a commitment I'm actually not capable of doing. Why am I not capable? I was not prepared. Does that make sense, you guys? So the reason I'm talking to you about this is because those of you that are single in here, someday I believe that the majority of you will probably say, I do. I believe that. But between now and when you say I do, this phenomenon will happen to you called falling in love. And when you fall in love, you lose your mind. The smartest people on planet are absolute idiots when they fall in love. It's the most amazing thing. All measure of objectiveness goes right out the window when you fall in love. And you wonder why it is your parents don't like the creep that you are suddenly attracted to. And you're like, but Mom, but Dad, he's just the greatest guy ever. And they're like, well, he's an absolute loser. Why do you, but he's going to do great things. And there's like, but he hasn't done anything yet. And yeah, but he's such a great guy. But does he have a job? And but we have a song. I mean, like, having a song fixes everything. But you're laughing right now because you know You probably thought that, right? Shri and I had a song. It took more than a song to get us 26 years down the road, though. So have your song, but don't count on your song. Why? Because words themselves are pointless without preparation. Promises are empty unless you're prepared to actually fulfill them. So if you're married in here today, I want you to know right now that write this down, now is the time to prepare for I do, because you have the time to prepare. Don't waste your singleness wishing something would happen. Work on you. I don't want to re-preach the last 3 sermons. I don't need to do that. You can go listen to those if you missed them. But there is something that God is giving you time to accomplish that your single life is about. Be intentional. Prepare. Prepare for what? Prepare to commit. Not just say the words, but be prepared so when you commit, you have the goods to run the whole race. Let me give you a phenomenon that'll happen. If you'd actually adopt this idea and say, you know what, I'm going to have a preparedness mindset. I'm going to live this season of preparation intentionally. I'm going to do that. I'm going to start working on me. I'm going to start learning and discovering issues in my life. I'm going to start I'll be intentional. If you'll actually be intentional of working on you, there's something that happens to you. And that is this: the value system that you look and evaluate people through begins to change. All of a sudden, when you're intentional about preparing you, it is crystal clear who is and isn't doing the same thing for them. And there's this momentum that happens, and you realize, I'm doing this on purpose. I'm not wasting my life. I'm not moaning and complaining and worrying. I know God's taking me to a point that my preparation will match the timing of His plan and purpose for me. He's going to give me all the time that I need to work on. I sound like Papa. All the time that I need. All the time that I need in order to deal with issues I don't see in me yet. So I'm going to be intentional with this. And when the timing of that's perfect, the Lord shows how that works, and all of a sudden that person will be there. It's how it works every time. But you got to be intentional with it. Preparation. A lot of times when we think of preparation, it makes sense if we're preparing for a test, a physics test or an economics test or an algebra test or a trig test or something in high school, or maybe you're in college, or maybe there's a recurring proficiency test you have to do at work or something along those lines. We know that we have to prepare for that. And so we just kind of buy that idea that there are some aspects of life that we need to prepare for so that we're ready for them. But a lot of times we never think about it, when it comes to relationships. But the Bible actually gives us some very crystal clear admonition about being prepared even in relationships. Look at this. Proverbs 14 verse 8 says this: the wisdom of the prudent is to give thought to their what? Their ways. But the folly of fools is deception. What I want you to do is do something. I've underlined prudent and ways. I'm talking to you about those. I want you to circle the word there. The wisdom of the prudent is to give thought to their ways. But the folly of fools is deception. Now, we don't often use the word prudent, so let me give you a quick working definition. A prudent means this is a person who understands that all of life is connected. That all of life is connected. I talked about this briefly in, I think it was week one, where I talked about the momentary decisions we make today that we don't really pay attention to. Once we make those decisions, those decisions become part of our past. Remember that? When something moves into our past, it often shows up in our future because the past begins to be a reflection of patterns that take us to our future. But in the moment we think, oh, it won't really matter if I do this. It won't really matter if I do that. It won't matter if I go hang out with this person. My parents are stupid. They don't understand. This person's really okay, so I'm going to go hang out with them anyway. It won't really matter. But what we're saying is the moment by moment choices actually matter. Why? Because all of life is connected. All of life is connected. So a prudent person is the one who understands that. When it talks about your ways, write this down. My ways are the behaviors, habits, patterns, path, and direction a person's life is on. So the prudent pay attention to their present behavior. Why? Because my present behavior is taking me to the future that is in front of me. Fools completely disengage that. Now watch this, everybody. Foolish people think that things just magically happen. In this case, we're talking about marriage, on the other side of I do. I just say the words I do, and like, magic fairy pixie dust just fixes everything, and it all just works. And those people are fooled. It doesn't work. In fact, the patterns that I have in my life right now, those patterns actually go into a marriage. They don't change. Marriage doesn't change my patterns. Now watch this. The problem areas of my patterns, marriage actually turns the volume up on those. Marriage doesn't fix the problems. Marriage amplifies. About 4 people right now thinking, how fast can I get out of here? Now, but listen, if you've been married longer than 10 minutes, you know this. We have this idea that I just need to get married because as soon as I get married, it's all going to be good. And so we'll spend thousands and tens of thousands and thousands of dollars to do one big special something, thinking that all we got to do is get to the wedding, because once we get to the wedding, everything's going to be fine. And I'm saying you'd be far better off spending the thousands on counseling, ministry, preparation, get out of debt, all the other stuff. Fix yourself, which we're really going with all this. Prepare. Get married in jeans if you have to. I'll do it for free if I need to. The wedding doesn't fix it. Preparation is the power of it, not the promises. Now watch this. The cool thing is, everybody, if you're prepared and you promise, God opens up blessings that are phenomenal. So I'm not saying you shouldn't have a wedding, and I'm not saying you shouldn't get married and make promises. You should do that. It's just you shouldn't go into it unprepared. So if you're married, one of the young ladies texted Pastor Shree after the first sermon and said, Pastor Shree, this sermon series has been a godsend to me. It's like Pastor Dave has been my dad for the last month. He's telling me about this. My dad never told me about men the way Pastor Dave was telling me about it. And I'm so grateful for what LifeLink is, because everything that happens in this place, God used to prepare me, and I'm so grateful for it. What am I saying? The point is not how bad is the news. It's pay attention, fix what needs to be fixed, let God begin to redeem what's going on, and move into the blessings that go with obedience. Does that make sense, everybody? You just can't cruise on autopilot and think somehow it's just going to work out. It's just not going to work out. You got to be intentional with it. Patterns. That's what the Bible's saying here in Proverbs 14, verse 15. The simple just believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his or her what? Steps. His or her steps. Steps. What are my steps? My patterns. Those steps. Why are my steps so important? Number one, my steps are taking me where I'm going. And that pattern is going to stay on course until I change my steps. Listen to me, this is a freebie. If you don't like the way your life is going, pay attention to your steps, because your steps are taking you there. Your choices are taking you there. The prudent person says, I'm going to pay attention to my steps. But the people that are fooled easily are just persuaded by words. Pay attention to patterns. Why? Write this down. Because the paths people choose trump the commitments that they make. What does that mean? The patterns, the paths, those cycles that you see in their lives, that's what's going to keep going. It isn't what people say, it's what they do. So what do? Commit now to become someone who can keep their commitments later. What are we saying with all of this? The bottom line is, if you're single, pay attention to some of these things about you. Look at your steps. Look at your path. What is it that needs to change? Engage we'll talk about some of these in just a couple of seconds. Engage the process, start working on them, make the difference, and watch God do something extraordinary. And for God's sake, pay attention to the path of the person you think you're attracted to. Hey, can I just give you some free advice? If you're really interested in someone, please have other people around you that you trust who can tell you if you're being deceived or not. You won't be able to tell. It's sobering to say that, and I don't mean that with kind of a laughing tongue in cheek. It's sad to see it. I watch it. Where people cruise all the way into a marriage, and everybody around them knows it's not right. But because they're in the moment of it, they can't see it. And they won't listen to wise advice. So what I'm saying is pay attention to your path. Pay attention to the patterns of the person you're looking towards. Let God bring you wisdom. Why? Because you will live with that for a long time. And I care about where you're going. I care about your life. And I don't want to just come in here week after week and just preach a sermon that makes you go, oh, that was really interesting. Boy, that was nice. I think I'll tweet that. But not do anything about it. God's word is filled with truth that actually heals people. And that's what we're after. So, let me tell you how to build an ark. I got about 8 minutes to do this. Y'all listening a little faster? Okay, building an ark. In other words, remember the context of the ark was God, who saw something coming, said, Noah, in order for you to avoid the catastrophe coming, here's what to do now when it doesn't look like it's important, so you'll be ready then. So, in a way, I'm saying that about your life. Number one, address your unresolved childhood issues. Address your unresolved childhood issues. Now, just before you write me off as a pastor who's going to talk about some weird, cheap, shallow pop psychology, what I'm actually saying is that every one of us experience challenges in our lives that cause us to have marks inside that distort the way we process through our lives. It happens to all of us. It's part of the journey. But we need to be whole and healed from those areas. So we need to be healed from those areas. Watch this. So that, let me say it this way. If I attempt relational cohesion or honest relational intimacy or oneness, or the potential of that growing with a person, if I attempt that before I'm whole and healthy inside, what I'm actually usually doing is trying to stuff something into a hole in my life that really just needs to be healed first. I try to stuff a person in there or an experience in there or a feeling in there. What God really wants to do is actually heal me first. Then a whole person and a whole person have the potential of meeting in a relationship, and the two of them actually experience relational synergy of wholeness and health. Does that make sense? So let me tell you, you're only foolish if you ignore this. Be intentional. Let God heal you in the areas of your life that are wobbly. Let Him. If you're not sure how to do it, let me give you some practical advice. Every one of these steps has got some practical advice. We offer life groups here called Freedom Life Groups. They're designed in order to really bring the power and the Word of God to these very things. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of it. All right? Address those childhood issues. Number 2, get out of debt. Get out of debt. I know this sounds silly to just put in here, just like, yeah, just get out of debt. But the truth is, you need to get out of debt. But the majority of the time, I realize there could be some exceptions to this, but the majority of the time, irresponsible consumer debt is tied directly to dysfunction in our hearts that make us think it's okay to do this, and so we choose to do this way instead of God's way. It's really a reflection of the fact that there's something in our life that needs to be healed. So instead of taking that distortion into a marriage and watching the marriage turn the volume up on that, we need to get out of debt. Go into a marriage whole and healthy. Go into a marriage free. You're like, well, it's going to take longer than 6 months to get out of debt. Well, you'll never be more motivated than right now to get out of debt. That once you have whatever it is you think you want, the motivation goes, right? So why not take advantage of the moment, get out of debt, and do it right? That's a complex situation for a lot of people too. So one of the things we offer here at LifeLink Church is called Financial Peace University. If you're not sure what to do about this very complex issue in life, it isn't just math, it's behavior. So it's more than everybody just about can add. It isn't that. It's behavior. So we offer Financial Peace University to help people engage with reality and truth from God's Word so that not only does their finances get shaped up, it actually is constructive in helping heal that part of them too. Does that make sense, you guys? So do it. Do it, Financial Peace University. Number 3, break bad habits. Break bad habits. As I said earlier, marriage does not solve problems. It just turns up the volume. Because if you have some bad habits and you get married, all you'll be is married with bad habits. It won't go away. It won't go away. Let me tell you, write this down. 6 months into your marriage, their issue will be your fault. So pay attention to who's coming in the marriage with you. Because their issue is going to probably be construed to be your fault. By the way, you'll do that to them too. Let me give you a quick picture of this, okay? So let's say here you are, and here's your issue. Everyone say, hi, issue. Okay, you're my issue. Here I am. Here's my issue. Between me and my issue is turbulence and strife and stress and distortion and all kind of pain, right? Y'all see it? This issue is causing me turbulence and strife and all the things that go with that. If you don't actually go through the process of healing this issue so it's not producing that, what happens is when you say I do to somebody, they get inserted right between you and your issue. You think it's going to fix you, so they get inserted right between you and your issue. And what happens is they get all the blowback of your issue. All the problems that you're having, they get the pain. You spew all of that on them eventually and wonder why they can't get their act together. And it's really you. It was about this point in the sermon that my popularity plummeted in the first service too. Listen, we own this stuff. And I tried to say in the beginning that the message might get a little bit dicey. It might get a little bit kind of pushy and proddy and all that. Just because God loves you enough to let you just simmer in your own mess. God wants us to be happy and healthy and whole. But in order to do that, we have to grab onto the handles He's given us and let Him pull us up out of this stuff through obedience. Number 4, avoid living together. Avoid living together before you're married. Right now, it's so popular. Everybody thinks, yeah, it's fine to do that. I'm saying avoid it. And I know you think I'm just a preacher and I'm obligated to say that because that's what preachers do. You're all fuddy-duddies and don't know how to have fun in life, so that's what you just project your stuff on everybody else. And I'm saying even research shows that this is a dumb idea. Statistically, living together before you get married is a bad idea. It does not improve your chances. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this before. Usually, women and men approach this whole idea from a different perspective. Women approach this idea as a step towards marriage. Men approach it as an experiment. Kind of a try it before you buy it. Right? And to be honest with you, those kind of guys, usually they go, well, it wasn't exactly what I was thinking, and so they start looking somewhere else. Yes or no? Okay. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Why? It doesn't work. Don't do it. And if you're doing it now, stop. Go move back in with your mother. But she won't let me do what I want to do. That's the problem. It isn't worth it. It doesn't work. It's foolishness to try. So stop. Just don't do it. Number 5, let me close with this. Get involved in your local church. Get involved in your local church. Why? Well, for a lot of reasons. Let me just say this. Ladies, let me just quick dress this idea, and walk it down the street. Ladies, if your approach to finding the guy of your dreams is to dress your body up in the most attractive way you think it looks and parade it through the bars until you find somebody that looks at you, you're trolling the wrong place with the wrong bait. You will get attention, but it will be with the pigs that are out there doing that. And whatever you fish with, you got to live with. I'm saying this as a pastor. I don't mean to make fun of this. Ladies, God gave you a phenomenal influence with the body He gave you. It can be used very influentially. The problem is if you use it wrong, you're stuck with it. And there are really bad guys out there. They're like, and I mean this with pain in my heart, ladies that say, why are all the men such pigs? And I had to be really delicate with how I say it, but I want to say, well, all the pigs you're talking about are in the places you're trolling with the wrong bait. Why are you doing that? You're worth more than that. You're not a commodity. You are a princess. You are priceless. Be modest with the gift God gave you. There is a prince who will charm you with the right charm. There is a prince that will match the commitment you have. That's the guy you're looking for. You won't find him the way you've been working. He's not in that crowd. He's where those princes don't hang out like that. And listen, men, let me talk to you for a minute. Don't be a pig. Listen, stop looking at porn. Porn will make you a pig. Why? Because it actually reshapes your brain. Science itself has shown us that. So if that's the pattern you're in, you're being a pig. Stop it. Because the princess you're looking for is never going to be in that medium. Got it? You'll never find her there either. Do you see how darkness works? I hate darkness. I hate darkness. Why? Because every time it destroys people. Every time. So let's go God's way. Let's go God's way. All right? We're good? All right. Okay, the whole point of today is prepare. Now, let me just say, if you're single, this is the time. Do it. Use this season to prepare. Go back through the sermon series, listen to it all again. I don't want to preach the whole sermon again. What do I do if I'm already married? If you're already married, look at the pain points. The pain points will show you where healing is necessary. Get the healing you need. It won't go away by itself. Get the healing you need and watch God do miracles. Yeah, but Pastor Dave, it's so far gone. Oh, no. Listen, one quick story, and I'll dismiss you. Whether you're single or married, listen to this one. This one applies to all of us. One of my favorite stories in all of Scripture is the prodigal son. Jesus used this particular analogy, this story, to demonstrate a truth about the way God works. After all, we're in Love Handles, a series about love, the heart of our Father, God. The story is that there was a very rich man who had 2 sons. The youngest son came in one day and demanded all of his inheritance before his father died so he could go spend it on whatever he wanted. The father, for whatever reason, actually gave it to him, and the young son left with everything that was his inheritance and squandered it in his own lifestyle. When it was all gone, he was left in a pig pen. And at his point of despair, it dawned on him, even a slave in my father's house has a better life than this one. So I'm going to go back and ask my dad if I can be a slave in his house. When the Bible says he came to himself, and that happened. He turned and left the pig pen and started walking back to his father's house. Watch this. Jesus said these words, when the father saw him coming a long way off, in other words, the father was looking. When he saw him coming a long way off, he stood there with hand on hip with a neck roll going, well, I knew you'd come to your senses. No, he didn't do that. That's religion. The father saw him coming a long way off, and the Bible says he ran to the son. What does that mean? When we come to our senses and turn, God closes the gap. And that's love. So I want to pray for you this morning. I want to let Father close the gap for you, because there's some of you in here that are at a desperate point of turning. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter if you've been here for a week or been here 10 years. You're at a point of decision, at a point of turning. The presence and power of God is here right now. Decide. Give your life to Jesus. Give your life back to Him. Decide today, I'm going to go His way. Why? Because if you'll turn at the point of your despair and say yes to Jesus, the Father will close the gap and redeem your past. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, right now I want to thank you for your faithfulness. I'm asking, God, that you would cause us to have courage in the point of these decisions to make them. Right now, with every head bowed and every eye closed, I'm going to ask everyone in here, if you know that you need to make a decision with Jesus and give your life to Him today, maybe give your life back to the Lord. Maybe there's some stuff going on. You know you're at a decision point. I've got to decide today. Right now, I'm going to ask you to make the decision. I'm not going to ask you to come to the front. I'm going to embarrass you in any way. But I want to offer you words to say in a simple prayer that gives your heart language that it's already wanting to say. In just a moment, I'm going to pray with you, but I'm going to ask in just about 5 seconds, you just slip your hand up and let me know who I'm praying with, all right? So if you're in here today, you know you need life change. Slip your hand up right now. I want to pray with you. I see one hand. Who else? 2, 3. Who else? 4. Come on, don't be shy. Nobody's looking around. 5, thank you. Who else? 6, 7. Who else? Who else? Thank you. 8, 9. Who else? Thank you, Lord. Okay, you can put your hands down. There's 10. Okay. Everybody look at me for just a moment. I saw 10 of you raise your hands. I'm going to lead you in a prayer. I want to give your heart words to say. I need you to open your mouth and say them out of your heart. Fair enough? Then I'm going to ask you to start forward and watch God do something extraordinary. But let's start with a prayer. Let's all pray this out loud. Heavenly Father, thank you for being good to me. Thank you for your love and the power of your word. Jesus, forgive me for all of my sins. Wash me, cleanse me, and make me new. Today, I give all of me to you. Come into my heart, the middle of who I am, and lead me forward as my God, my Savior, my Lord from this day forward. Fill me with the power of the Holy Spirit. Give me the strength that I need to live for you for the rest of my life. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Hey, can we just celebrate in this place today?
Thank you for watching the LifeLink Church video podcast. It's our prayer that you heard a word from God today. If you have a story to share about how God is working in your life, then let us know and send us an email at mystory@lifelinkchurch.com.